Can you come here for a tiny tick? Because I want to show you this. This guy's given us a lovely donation.
Clan survives on a staff of 2. The budget depends on one-off donations and small membership fees.
Oh, that's great when people do that. They realise just how much we need a bit of extra cash.
Yes.
But listen, this is not going to get us to the end of the year, Leonie.
No, it's not. We need a sugar daddy.
Finding the rent is a constant struggle. The alternative to children's homes was foster care, but the sheer numbers of children needing care during the baby boom overwhelmed the foster care system. For those children who were still lucky enough to find a foster family, they could be sent back at any time to the institution.
People would come and they'd pick you from this lineup. And on the basis of that lineup, it was like a lottery. You were still in or you were out, but really reinforced the loneliness of institutional life. On one of these occasions, I was actually picked, and I'd been there for 3.5 to 4 years. At this time, I'm a teenager, and the Beatles were the hottest thing around, and I wanted a Beatle haircut and absolutely refused. And I can remember putting on my very first tantrum. And I can remember behind the door him saying, "That's it, he's going back." And it's at that point that I had made a decision to go back to institutions myself, and I ended up voluntarily going back. The moment I walked back into Ralston, I knew that I had not made my best decision. I could have possibly done without the Beatle haircut.
Peter remained in an institution until he turned 18. Year in, year out, behind closed doors, children hoped for anything to brighten their lives.
Every end of the year holidays, we would come back from our holidays in anticipation of which nuns were leaving and which new nuns were coming in. When I was about 11, a new nun came. When Sister Genevieve came, she was different. She smiled at the children. How wonderful was that? One time, Sister Genevieve gave me a holy picture that I still have to this day. And on the back of it, it said, "Thank you for polishing our floors so beautifully, Leonie." That was the first time that I remember that somebody thanked me for a job well done.
There were many good people who worked in homes and who wanted to do the best for children, but they tended to be defeated by the system.
Children came and went all the time, so did the staff. They were poorly paid and untrained. There weren't enough of them.
Anybody could work in a children's home. You didn't have to have any qualifications. In fact, there weren't any. There was no sort of course you could do that would train you for it. So often the background of staff was nursing or religious of some description. But many people were just people off the street. You could say you loved children. No one was going to test it. Lots of care leavers will say to you, the good ones always left. They couldn't stand the system. That's something you hear very often.
It was far easier to manage large groups of children with discipline, but it was easy to go too far.
There was plenty of times that I had the cuts, and you just knew that if you cried, you'd quite often get more. So you learnt to be able to stand up and take it without crying.
And I used to get a flogging for wetting the bed.
And if she didn't wake up early enough to get back into her own bed, she used to get a big flogging if they'd walk in and find her asleep with me.
All the people who wet their beds would be lined up outside Reverend Mother's office, and you had to wait for her to issue the strap to you.
One of our punishment was standing naked on a chair, arms in the air, until you almost collapsed with exhaustion. And then you've got the welt across the bare bottom, and it was a big cane stick. Always called into the superintendent's office, and you had to pull your pants down in front of him, 13, 14 years of age. It didn't matter to him, you know. You had no dignity. He just took it from you
Yes.
the moment you walked into that room.
Corporal punishment was accepted in this era and happened in schools and happened in families. But when we look at homes, we're not just talking about corporal punishment, we're talking about criminal assault.
I could show you scars where I was beaten by a person who had a barbed wire twitch, who just bent the barbed wire several times over and used to just welch it with that barbed wire.
And then one time I got such a flogging, not only from a hand, fist. I had his fist like this. And he dragged me out into the quadrangle in front of everyone. Dragged me by the hair, he did. And he pulled my hair out of my head. Chunks and chunks of it.
The homes that were run by the most extreme versions of religion seem to me to have been amongst the worst. Beating of children and crushing children had very much a religious underpinning. The sort of idea of children as born bad and having to be disciplined, but very harshly disciplined. And parents thought their children were being well looked after and kindly looked after. Adults don't do that to children. Nuns don't do that to children. Public servants don't do that to children. Oh, yes, they do. That's what people don't want to know.
Welfare officers carried out regular inspections, but they only looked at the physical requirements.
The welfare departments needed the homes. They're not going to look too closely at how things are being done. It's an essential service that state governments do some of but don't want to do all of. The welfare departments also had a sort of sense of security that these were homes being run by Christian organisations, so of course the children would be well looked after.
The 2004 Senate inquiry recommended a national apology and funding for Clan. However, an apology was never offered, and 15 months later, a government official visited them at Clan and behind closed doors told them they would get nothing.
I think we hoped out of that government response that Clan would get funding and we could say, OK, now we can get on with broadening what we're trying to do, help more people.
I think the feeling that's come through from the members is, are they waiting for us to all die? And I think they are.
Sunday was visiting day. Most children had families somewhere, and they lived in hope that somebody would come.
100 children waiting for the doorbell to ring. You could hear the doorbell ring in the play yard. We would all be sitting around these benches that had no backs to them, and we would wait to see if it was a visitor for us.
We'd wait for my mother to visit when she wouldn't come.
I can't even remember her coming at all. Whether it's a mental block, I'm not sure.
She came twice.
I remember her coming very frequently, and she very often took us to a cafe. And